In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. And please be seated. The second Sunday of Advent theme is peace. First lesson from Isaiah addresses the people of Israel in a nice way. Comfort my people. And if you're not hearing the strains of Messiah in your head at this point, perhaps I can plant it. Comfort my people. Isaiah is trying to be nice to the folks. They've just endured years, decades of exile. They were allowed to go home, and so he's saying, comfort. Time of punishment is over. Your time of exile is done. Comfort. He turns around. Because he says, I know who you are. I know what people are like. You're like the grass. But the grass withers and the flower fades. It's a way of saying, we can only be nice, but for so long. I know myself, when I'm good, I'm really pretty good. And I'm bad, really, really bad. And I try to be good all the time, but I don't quite always make it. Fall a little short. Try again. That's what Isaiah means. The grass withers and the flower fades. Try as you might, you're always going to stumble sometimes. Things happen. Not always where we want to be. But then again, he turns it around and gives words of hope. Prepare in the wilderness a highway for our God. Make ready for the love of God to come in. Isaiah was the court prophet. He lived in the temple in the city. He was a city boy. But he's telling the people, go into the wilderness and prepare the way of the Lord. Go into the wilderness. Make the paths straight. Get ready. Saying, get ready. But I like this image of wilderness, which he uses. The image of wilderness is often used a lot. The Israelites were wandering in the desert, in the wilderness for 40 years. Jesus goes into the wilderness and is tempted. The wilderness is a very powerful and important metaphor. For those of you who are PBS fans like me, some years ago there was a show called Winston Churchill, The Wilderness Years. The years of exile, the years of confusion. That powerful, powerful image. We know that image because we've been in our own wilderness years. Times of confusion, times of doubt, times of grief, times of disorientation, you name it, those wilderness years are real. And sometimes they seem like they will never, ever end. And Isaiah is saying, in those wilderness years, in that wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. Make the mountains lower, the valleys high. Make a nice, plain road. Sounds good, but how do you do it? How do I make my mountains low? How do I bring my valleys up? They get very flowery and poetic, but they don't fill in the blanks. And that's for us, fill in those blanks. John the Baptist has a take on this. He uses the same prophecy. The gospel writer uses the same prophecy, but he turns it around a little bit. Whereas Isaiah said, a voice cries out, in the wilderness prepare the road. In the wilderness prepare the way of the Lord. The gospel writer turns it around and he says, John the Baptist's words, I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness. Make way for the Lord. Isaiah is on the outside, giving us hope and instruction to work our way through. John the Baptist is in the wilderness with us, again telling us to prepare the way of the Lord to work through. When I've had my hard times and people want to give me advice, people are not short on wanting to give advice. The people whose advice I listen to are the people who were in the same situation I'm in. They have a credibility. People who don't know what I'm going through, who offer me advice, do not have the same credibility to me as the people who have been in the trenches with me. Like John the Baptist in the wilderness with me. If he says, go that way, I'm more likely to go that way than listen to Isaiah, because Isaiah doesn't know what the wilderness is like, at least my wilderness. But we get advice, we get signals and guidance from all over the place. A friend of mine in early recovery, when his life had blown up and things were miserable for him, he just didn't know where to go. He was physically a wreck, socially a wreck, financially a wreck. Everything was just crashing down around him. He didn't know what to do. He was looking for advice, and he was getting advice from all these different corners, and he said, everyone's telling me what to do, and their advice conflicts. What do I do? He mentioned that one time, and this older woman who'd been through a lot went over and patted his hand and said, honey, go where it's warm. There's a language called love that we respond to, we hear it. The voice of God comes to the voice of love in the people that we trust, in the people that we know, the people who want what is good for us. There is a voice that cries out, prepare the way of the Lord. And that preparation comes through honesty for my friend, for myself, and for each of us. Once we start getting honest when we call out for help, I did this, or I didn't do this, or I thought this, I felt this, the cry for help. It's the way that those mountains, and the encouragement that builds us up creates that smooth road for the love of God to come in. The voice. Again, the voice is another metaphor that comes in Scriptures time and time again. It's in Isaiah, it's in the Gospel. It came out of the burning bush for Moses. It's in the parables of Jesus. The sheep know the voice of the shepherd and respond to the voice. We recognize a voice. But ultimately, the voice is of love. We follow that voice, go where it's warm. So that when we stumble, when we find ourselves in the wilderness, we listen for a voice to help us out. The voice of love, come here, come this way, and follow. The voice of God comes to us through the voice of loving friends and family. People who know what we're going through and who offer significant advice, guidance. Second Sunday of Advent is again of listening, preparing, and to look at our own wilderness. How much of our wilderness are we able to look at honestly and truthfully? How much of my wilderness do I create? I'll tell you, the problems I have are generated by one person. And that one person is the one I look at in the mirror every morning. He's usually the one that creates my biggest problems, creates the wilderness. Find that way out is about being honest, about being open, listening for the voice of God through the voice of love. And in that, finding hope, finding peace. Please stand and we'll say together the Nicene Creed on page 10 in your bulletin. We believe in one God,